If you're getting ready to sell your home in 2026, the sellers losing the most money right now aren't the ones pricing too low. They're the ones pricing carefully. There's a trap so quiet, so reasonable sounding, most sellers walk right into it while thinking they're protecting equity. Maybe you're preparing to list. Maybe you've been sitting on the market for weeks with no offers. Maybe you're doing this alone for the first time. One decision costs more than any renovation. One is controversial because it involves someone you love. The final one changes how you see this whole house entirely. Here's what most sellers miss when they set that first list price. It feels responsible. You looked at what your neighbor got last spring. You added a little for the finished basement. You landed on a number that feels defensible at the kitchen table. And here's what I want you to know. That same reasoning is why your home may be sitting on the market right now with 2 showings in 3 weeks, and a lot of silence. Let me give you a picture. A couple I hear about all the time, in one form or another. Their neighbor closed at $815,000 in a hotter market. They price at $825,000 because their kitchen is nicer, the yard is bigger, they took care of the house. On paper, that's a solid argument. In practice, they just disappeared. Here's the part most sellers miss. Buyers don't search by property, they search by budget, and most of them draw a line at round numbers. A buyer searching up to $800,000 never sees your listing. Not once. Not on their app, not in the email their agent sends every Tuesday, not in the Sunday drive-around. You're not overpriced by $10,000, you're invisible by $10,000. Think about how you searched when you were house shopping. You didn't type 807K to 1823K into the box. You typed 750 to 800, or 800 to 900. Buyers work in tens and quarters, not exact numbers. That's not a real estate rule. That's just human behavior. And it's why pricing right at the top of a bracket is one of the quietest, most expensive mistakes in this business. And every week you sit there, something worse is happening. Your listing is aging. Days on market start climbing. Agents pull it up and see the date. Buyers pull it up and wonder what's wrong with it. Meanwhile, you're paying the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the HOA if you have one, the utilities to keep the lights on for showings that aren't happening, the lawn guy, the pool guy, if you're in a warm market. Depending on where you live, holding an unsold home can run you thousands a month, every month. Now, the objection I hear immediately is, we can't just give it away. I understand that reaction completely. Nobody wants to feel like they're leaving money on the table. But here's the second twist. The position you thought was protecting your equity is the exact position keeping buyers from ever seeing your house. You didn't protect anything. You built a wall around it. The fix isn't slashing the price in a panic. It's repositioning. Drop into a new bracket, $799,000 instead of $825,000. And now every buyer searching up to $800,000 sees you for the first time. In a lot of markets, that one move brings back showings within days. And here's what a lot of sellers don't expect. Once you have real interest, competing buyers can bid you right back up to where you started, sometimes higher. Because now you're playing in a room full of people, not defending a room that was empty. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Are you priced to sell or priced to be right? Because those are 2 very different goals, and the second one is expensive. The list price is only the first number the market judges. The next number you're about to write is the check to a contractor, and that one can hurt worse. I see this all the time. Sellers get ready to list and suddenly want to renovate. New luxury vinyl plank throughout, a kitchen refresh, new backsplash, new counters, maybe new appliances. A bathroom update because buyers won't like the tile. And on paper, again, it feels responsible. You want the house to show well. You want it to feel worthy of the years you spent inside it. Listen, I understand that impulse. When you've raised a family in a house, when you've hosted the holidays, when you've painted the same walls 3 times over the decades. The idea of listing it in its current condition can feel like sending your kid to school in wrinkled clothes. But here's the truth that a lot of sellers only figure out too late. Buyers rarely pay you back dollar for pre-list renovations. The market doesn't reward the choices you made in a hurry. It rewards the choices they get to make. And when you drop $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 into updates right before listing, 3 things happen at once. You take on the entire risk. You push the listing date back by 6 or 8 weeks, sometimes right out of your best-selling season, and you often pick finishes based on your own taste, which may not match the buyer walking through the door. The couple I want you to picture is standing in their kitchen holding a contractor's quote for $42,000. They believe it's going to add $60,000 to the sale. It might add 15, it might add nothing. And they were about to hit the spring market, but now they'll hit the summer slowdown instead. Here's the second twist, and this one lands hard. They weren't renovating for the buyer. They were renovating for the version of themselves who still lives there. There's a subtle grief in leaving a house you've loved. Sometimes we manage that grief by trying to make the house worthy of what it meant to us. But the buyer isn't buying your memories. They're buying a space they can imagine as theirs. The compromise almost always looks the same. Skip the renovation. Do a clean and brighten pass instead. Fresh paint in the right neutral. Declutter aggressively. Pack up half the personal photos. Deep clean everything. Spend a fraction of that renovation budget on professional staging and photography. And list 8 weeks earlier, in the season that fits your market. The concrete payoff, you saved $30,000+, hit the market when buyers were shopping, and let the buyer imagine their own kitchen. The emotional payoff, you stopped pouring money into a house you're leaving and started saving it for the life you're moving into. So here's the question. Are you fixing this house for the buyer or for the you who still lives here? It's a different question than it sounds, and how you answer it changes the whole budget. Now, you can undo a paint color. You can walk back a renovation plan. But the person guiding you through this whole sale is a lot harder to walk back once you've signed papers with them. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for a lot of sellers, because we're going to talk about the agent. Here's a situation I see all the time. You've known someone for years. Maybe he sold you the house in 2004. Maybe she's your nephew's neighbor. Maybe he's a friend from church, or the guy who did your parents' sale. They're a good person. They're a licensed agent. And when it comes time to list, you sign with them without interviewing anyone else, because it would feel wrong not to. I want to validate that instinct before I challenge it. Loyalty is admirable. Familiarity feels safe. Nobody wants to have an awkward call, and in a lot of cases that agent may serve you perfectly well. But here's what I want you to know. This transaction, this one house, this one closing, is likely the biggest financial move of the next 10 years of your life. Would you use the same doctor for open heart surgery just because they took out your appendix in 2004? The question sounds harsh. It isn't meant to. It's meant to separate 2 things that don't always go together. How much you love this person, and how well equipped they are to walk you through the biggest transaction of the decade. The signs that loyalty is costing you show up quietly. The pricing strategy is a rough guess. The marketing is one set of photos and a listing on the MLS. There's no plan for what happens if you sit at 30 days. There's no honest read on your price band. Feedback from showings is vague or missing, and when you ask hard questions, the answers feel more comforting than concrete. Here's the second twist. Sellers don't stay with the loyal agent because they think it's the best financial decision. They stay because firing them feels like betraying someone. That's a human thing. It's understandable, and it's exactly why the market takes advantage of it. And listen, this pulls adult children into an awkward spot too. Mom or dad has an agent from 20 years ago. The kids can see the pricing is off, The marketing is thin. The house isn't moving. But they don't want to be the ones who insist. They don't want to feel like they're steering a parent, or worse, like they're overruling a friendship the parent values. So the listing just sits. Nobody says anything, and the equity that was going to fund the next chapter gets eaten by taxes, mortgage payments, and time. The compromise here is beautiful in its simplicity. You don't have to fire anyone. You interview 2 other agents alongside the loyalty pick. You listen to how each one prices, how each one markets, how each one reads your local market and your price band, and then you make the call with your eyes open. One of 2 things happens. Either your longtime agent rises to the challenge and delivers a real strategy, or you have permission, with actual data in your hand, to make a different choice. So here's the question. Would you rather have one awkward call now or a year of regret? Because those are the 2 prices, and only one of them ever ends. The best agent in your city, though, still can't fix the mistake most sellers make after this sale closes. Because now we're not talking about the house you're selling. We're talking about the house you're about to buy. Here's a scene that plays out over and over. Empty nesters, or a couple heading into retirement. Their current house is 3,200 square feet. 4 bedrooms they don't need. 2 staircases their knees are starting to complain about. A yard that has stopped being a joy and started being a chore. They decide it's time to downsize into a 1,500 square foot ranch. Numbers work. Neighborhood looks nice online. They're excited. And they've never actually walked through a 1,500 square foot ranch. Here's the part most sellers underestimate. Square footage on paper does not feel like square footage in real life. The dining room that seated 10 becomes a dining room that seats 4. The living room shrinks to the size of your old den. The kitchen counter you spread out on for holidays becomes a countertop where 2 people cooking bump elbows. The garage doesn't fit the second car, and the workshop, and the Christmas boxes. The closet doesn't fit a life's worth of clothes. The hidden cost here isn't just financial. It's irreversible. They sell fast, buy in a rush, and within 6 months realize they don't fit the life they're actually living. Now moving again means new closing costs, new agent fees, and possibly a market that's shifted against them. The second twist is quieter. You're not just selling a house, you're buying a life. And most sellers never stand inside that life before they commit to it. The temporary trial for this one is the easiest experiment in the whole video. Tour 3 smaller homes with 0 intention to buy. Just walk them. Feel the room sizes, open the closets, stand in the kitchen, sit on the imaginary couch. Do this before you list, not after. If the plan holds up, you're going in with confidence. If it doesn't, you find out while there's still time to think it through, not while you're staring at moving boxes in a room that's already too small. So here's the question I want to leave with you. Have you actually stood inside the life you're planning to move into, or have you only imagined it? And here's the last piece. The one no amount of pricing, renovation, agent choosing, or house touring can solve. Because now we're inside the cellar, not the sale. I want to speak carefully here because this one is tender. There's a version of the cellar I want you to picture. Someone attending real estate seminars in the back of the room, not the front, the back, year after year. Taking notes, asking one polite question, going home. Maybe it's a widow selling for the first time without her husband. Maybe it's a couple where one spouse's health has quietly changed. Maybe it's a parent whose adult kids keep gently bringing it up. Whatever version fits, you may recognize yourself or someone you love. Their reasoning made sense at every point. They stayed because the house raised the family, and letting go of it feels like letting go of the family. They stayed because a spouse wasn't ready. They stayed because grief doesn't run on a calendar. They stayed because the kids still came home for Thanksgiving, and this was the table. I'm not going to pretend those reasons don't matter. They do. But here's what the years quietly cost. Markets shift. Health becomes less predictable. Energy narrows. A yard that used to be a Saturday morning becomes a Saturday-long project. Taxes and insurance climb. The stairs get harder, and at some point, the house you own starts to own you back. Here's the second twist, and it's the deepest one in this video. You may not be waiting because the plan isn't right. You may be waiting because saying yes makes the transition real. It makes the chapter that raised your family officially over. It makes retirement or widowhood or a new phase of life something you're inside of instead of approaching. The compromise here isn't a listing date, it's education without commitment. Get a free walkthrough from an experienced local agent 1 or 2 years before you actually list. Learn what to update and what to skip. 2 or 3 smaller homes or a retirement community with no obligation. Have one honest conversation about carrying costs. You don't have to say yes to anything. You just have to stop being surprised by the numbers when the moment arrives. So here's the last question, and it's the one I want you to sit with. Are you waiting because you're not ready, or because saying yes would make it real? Before I wrap this up, if you've been anywhere in this video, the pricing seller, the renovation seller, the loyalty seller, the downsizer, or the one who's just not ready, I would love for you to tell me in the comments the one thing you wish you'd known before you listed, or the mistake you almost made. Your story might be exactly what another seller needs to hear before they make the same call. Here's what I want to leave you with. Selling a home well isn't about squeezing every last dollar out of the closing table. It's about deciding what deserves your remaining pre-move months and what's quietly draining them. You own this house, but the maintenance, the indecision, the taxes, the calendar, the emotional weight, those things may effectively own you. You get to keep what's meaningful, and you get to question what's merely familiar. Those are not the same thing, and the difference is the whole game. If pricing strategy is the piece you want to dig into next, I've got a video that walks through how to read your local market and land on a number that actually brings buyers through the door. That's a good next step. Take care of yourself, and whatever you decide, decide it on purpose.